My fellow Lorcana community, we need to talk and recognize that Ravensburger has screwed up, that their missteps have created Lorcana's competitive winter, that it's not really acceptable, that there is not a substantive excuse for it, that it sucks, that they need to do better. My name is Joseph Quigley, aka Pandemonium Heart, with Team Enter the Battlefield. I had the privilege to attend 4 Disney Lorcana Challenge events in 2024, as well as North American Continentals in January, where I made it through an LCQ and got top 16. I will say that Lorcana has changed my life and blessed me with so many great opportunities, and I will forever be thankful to Ravensburger and this great community for that. But last week, Ravensburger declared that Worlds would not have any public open component, which was elaborated on today in both a streamed pre-recorded broadcast as well as a rather insightful article from The Gamer. Myself and many others are not satisfied with this competitive news, especially because it is a case of Ravensburger going back on their word. I'm going to lay it all out best I can and get out some of the raw emotions I'm feeling following the news today. At D23 back in August, Ravensburger representatives laid out that there would be a public aspect to Worlds. That is no longer happening. It's hard to say if there's any individual that blame could be put upon for this, but I feel comfortable, at least, putting some blame on Ravensburger for ultimately that plan being pushed aside, for them going back on their word here. Because people made plans based on that word. They saved time and money with the intent of going to Worlds only to have their trust in Ravensburger broken. Now, the reason for this decision was laid out best in Eric Switzer's article for The Gamer by Chief Marketing Officer Elaine Chase. Chase said, and I'll quote a bit from the article here, she said that the reason why Worlds isn't being open as previously promised is that, quote, it is simply because the success of Disney Lorcana took everyone by complete surprise. At the time that was talked about, we did not realize the overwhelming response we were going to get for challenges and Worlds, and how many players were going to be so eager to be part of these things. When I joined in October, there was one person running all play for Disney Lorcana across both challenges and stores, and we didn't yet have the championships planned, and they were happening in 8 weeks. We just could not take on the amount of work it takes. Now, I respect her transparency here and appreciate getting a real response. I may have appreciated something like this being in the streamed broadcast, but I know that would have dampened the hype. At least they talked to a journalist, took the tough question, and answered it somewhere. But this is not a good enough excuse or reason. Firstly, the idea that they could not see how much people were interested by the time the panel happened in August is absurd. There had been a couple of DLCs already by that point. The first DLC in May, Atlanta, sold out in a few minutes. You should have been able to see that these events were going to be having a huge demand by that point because that had already been proven. The answer here also begs the question of why, in October, in the middle of a season that featured 12 massive, large-scale events, you only had one person running all Lorcana competitive play? That sounds absolutely insane. Now, I understand Lorcana has now hired more people or is in that process. Chase goes on to say that the team of one person is now 5 people working on competitive, and that team will have a great second season of competitive Lorcana play, hopefully. But what I don't understand is how it can be that you put on a season like the first one with only one person on the team running things on Ravensburger's side for so many massive, large-scale events. Why would you not be hiring more people as soon as Atlanta sold out in minutes? Why would you not recognize the hype just based on the first couple of sets or the demand from the first couple of DLCs? Why would you not be hiring a more robust team to meet the clear demand that you were dealing with sooner? From my perspective, somebody or some buddies at Ravensburger messed up here. I understand that hiring people can be difficult, but there were clearly some miscues in my mind, and the result seems to be that we did not have an event for Worlds for the public because they did not have a team in place that could get it ready in time. Now, I would be remiss not to recognize that Ravensburger has stepped back or away from Pro Play Games, which was organizing DLCs, was the event runner, and taking care of a lot of logistics to my understanding. It's clear that the two sides have parted ways. Pro Play Games is planning a completely separate event from Worlds, and as far as I can tell, is not involved in Worlds. Now, from my perspective, I largely liked PPG and how they ran events. And though there were hiccups, by and large, I would argue that PPG ran DLCs quite well and smoothly, with main events generally flowing pretty well. Were things perfect? No, but I'm not convinced that some other party would have been dramatically better, given some of the challenges Ravensburger effectively had here with the need to massively scale up these events in a fairly short turnaround. I do not know why Ravensburger removed PPG. I do not know if you'll ever get certain answers. In a vacuum, I don't have a problem with Ravensburger's decision on this. There are cases where business relationships sour for all kinds of reasons, and I'm okay if Ravensburger wanted to go a different direction, either in-house or with a different vendor. All of that is fine in a vacuum. But it's hard not to see the timing of the separation of PPG as contributing, or at least a contributing factor, to Worlds not going ahead as previously planned. Somewhat suddenly, perhaps, Ravensburger no longer has a contractor to run these DLC-level events and help lift that burden of logistics that they're citing as the reason why Worlds can't have a public component. And they have not yet named any successor company to take over the role of event runner that PPG had. Thus, I can't help but question their decision to separate from PPG, at least the timing of it, if it is part of why Worlds has no public component. Now, to be clear, I do not know for certain to what degree, if at all, this is the case. I think it is a fair question to ask, and it was asked in that article from The Gamer about PPG and what was going on with them, and there wasn't an actual response from the Ravensburger representatives, unfortunately. So I don't know if we're ever going to get a clear-cut answer on this, but I had to highlight that because I do have to question what exactly happened here, given the circumstances we find ourselves in. All these factors combine to the reality we find ourselves in. Worlds is not going to have a public component, and only 28 players and their plus ones are going to get to enjoy it live, although they certainly deserve to. There is no news or information yet about what exactly future Disney Lorcana challenges are going to look like. We are promised that with the World's Podcast, but effectively that means that our last DLC level event was in January with Continentals. For Europeans, it was December. Europeans did get a smaller 512 person event run by Ravensburger, but that was nowhere near the scale or pricing of a DLC. Given that there has to be some lead time between the announcement and DLCs starting, it could be September, October, November, maybe even longer until we get our next DLC. That could mean an 8 to 10 month gap between DLC level events. After seeing Lorcana run 10 DLCs and the European Continental Championship in 2024, this seems like it's going to be a massive step backwards for 2025. And to me, that's not really acceptable. It's not okay. It doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of logical progression. This is bizarre to see them successfully put on a massive circuit of events in the span of 7 months, and then fail to follow that up in a timely fashion. I will say I would have understood and been more accepting if we got a Worlds DLC or a DLC Lite kind of event, or any competitive event at Worlds. That would mean the gap is a lot smaller and will at least give us something to tide ourselves over while waiting for the next competitive season. But we aren't getting that. We're just in this long competitive winter in Lorcana, and there's not really an end in sight at this point. It's disappointing. And Ravensburger could have and should have done better. Ultimately, they are a multi-million-dollar company, and we have bought into this card game for many, many millions of dollars. I understand that there are many humans at Ravensburger working and doing a great job and working to make this game great, but I can't really find it in myself to find their excuses palatable, given how big the company is and given the money that they are making and are going to make from this game. The mistakes have been made. What's done is done. We can't really change things at this point. But better things can be done tomorrow, and I want to be constructive. I truly believe Lorcana had an amazing first competitive season, and we can get back to that in time. I'm happy to hear that they have made a more robust team and are working on improvements. But here is what I believe needs to happen. 1. The announcement on the World stream has to be a banger. We've been delayed and delayed on information about DLCs for far too long already. I want a proper roadmap fully laid out. I want multiple events that I can plan for. I'm hopeful that we might see at least 1 to 3 DLCs in North America in this calendar year, along with plenty next year to look forward to. 2. A competitive judge program has to be part of this. Snobby has been pushing hard for this, and he is absolutely right. That announcement in June needs to have that element that at least it's something that they're working on, if not have prepared imminently. 3. The end of 2-game format, or a sincere effort to talk to the community about it. I've made no secrets about my disdain for 2-game format. I'm going to link a video essay I did in the description. Many other competitive players that I talk to also have a strong distaste for the format, and I'm convinced that if you put it to a poll, most competitive players are probably not going to want 2-game format to continue at DLCs. I want to see this format end. To me, the cons outweigh the pros, and I want to see them announce that in June. If their intention is to carry on with this format, I better see some real effort made on their part to consult with the community and actually gauge what we want. These competitive events are for us. You should be asking us what competitive format we want, not being top down about it and assuming that the format of 2 games is the best one possible. Now, I'm willing to be wrong. If most competitive players in their data gathering want 2-game format, I'm willing to take the loss on that one and allow it to go forward if they can substantively prove that. But from what I see, I think most competitive players don't want 2-game format, want to go to best of 3 or maybe something else you can get creatively done. We need to move beyond 2-game format, and I'm going to be extremely disappointed if they just carry on with that as a default because they aren't putting the effort in to see what players want. And finally, 4, I'm hoping to see a plan for more ways to compete outside DLCs and set champs. This is something that I hope that they talk about, at least. I don't necessarily expect to see plans for that specifically in June, or rather specific plans in June, but I hope that they identify it as something on their radar. Other card games have smaller scale events besides the big DLC level ones. They have regionals on top of the store championships. I think that recent event in Ravensburger is probably a good example of what that style of event could look like. I hope that they maybe find ways to do more of those kinds of officially sanctioned smaller events that could tide us over between DLC seasons and just let more people access great community gatherings for the game. I hope we do see these elements as part of this announcement, or at least an acknowledgement of them, and that we have a bright competitive future to look forward to once this long dry spell is over. There is a lot of reason to have hope for Lorcana's future. Beyond the World's announcement, the broadcast today was really exciting, and the production values were excellent. Them hiring more people that clearly have passion is a great sign. Rotation is going to be good for the game in my mind, and should help shake things up in a good way. And they are fixing one of Lorcana's biggest problems, packs often feeling bad to open, by introducing some great new rarity concepts. And we're finally going to have another good set champ promo, with that Muslim Dragon promo likely to be the most exciting one since Rockstar Stitch in Set 3. There is a lot of reason for hope and optimism, and I want to say that this video does not come from a place of hatred, but it comes from a place of love and passion for the game, and a desire to keep engaging with it on a deep level. Lorcana has done so much for me, and I just want to see it be the best it can be. But that comes with acknowledging that mistakes were made, learning from them, and doing better. And I hope Ravensburger can do that.